My name is Adam, and I've lived in Austin, Texas, my whole life. Driving late at night isn't anything new for me. I'm the kind of person who thrives on quiet roads, with the hum of the tires and a good playlist keeping me company. But even I'll admit there's something eerie about Texas highways after dark. The long stretches of nothingness, the occasional flicker of a distant light, the overwhelming sense of isolation. It's enough to make your imagination run wild. Usually I don't mind it. I've always found a strange peace in the solitude. That night, though, was different. It started like any other late-night drive. I'd spent the weekend visiting an old college buddy in San Antonio. By the time I hit the road back to Austin, it was close to midnight. The highway stretched out in front of me, a ribbon of asphalt illuminated only by my headlights. It was just me, the empty road, and the soft murmur of my favorite podcast playing through the speakers. About an hour into the drive, I spotted the faint glow of headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, it didn't register as anything unusual. Late-night drivers were common, even on these deserted stretches of highway. The truck behind me seemed old, a boxy shape with dim headlights that flickered slightly as it bounced over the uneven road. It stayed at a respectful distance, never getting too close, and I didn't think much of it. But then, something odd happened. The truck stayed behind me, matching my speed perfectly. If I sped up, so did it. If I slowed down, the gap between us remained exactly the same. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe they were heading in the same direction. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Still, the back of my neck prickled with unease. I decided to test my theory. At the next exit, I veered off the highway and onto a smaller road that curved toward a rest area. The truck followed. When I pulled into the lot and parked near the vending machines, the truck didn't park. Instead, it slowed down, idling a few feet away, its headlights illuminating the asphalt in front of me. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my pulse quickening. The truck just sat there, engine rumbling, the faint outline of the driver barely visible through the windshield. After what felt like an eternity, the truck pulled forward and parked a few spaces away, still running. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I could feel their eyes on me. It sent a chill down my spine. For a moment, I considered getting out of the car and going to the vending machine, pretending everything was normal. But something about the truck's presence, the way it had followed me, the way it lingered now, made my instincts scream at me to stay put. Before I could make a decision, the truck's headlights suddenly flashed, high beams cutting through the darkness like a spotlight. I squinted against the glare, my heart pounding. The truck's engine roared as it peeled out of the parking lot, tires kicking up dust and gravel. For a brief moment, I felt relief, thinking they'd lost interest and moved on. But when I pulled back onto the highway, the truck was there again, its headlights appearing in my rearview mirror like a pair of glowing eyes. This time, it was closer, too close. The truck tailgated me, its high beams flooding my car with light. I could barely see the road ahead, my hands tightening on the steering wheel as I tried to stay calm. Okay, I muttered to myself, my voice shaky. Just ignore it. They'll back off eventually. But they didn't. If anything, they got more aggressive. The truck honked, a loud, blaring sound that shattered the stillness of the night. My heart was racing now, panic clawing at my chest. I tapped the brakes lightly, hoping they'd get the hint and back off, but instead they swerved into the opposite lane, pulling up alongside me for a brief, terrifying moment. I glanced over and caught a glimpse of the driver. It was a man, his face obscured by shadows, but I could see he was looking directly at me. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in the way he stared that made my skin crawl. He swerved back behind me, flashing his high beams again and honking repeatedly. My mind raced through my options. Should I pull over, speed up, call for help? None of them seemed like good choices. Pulling over could make me an easy target. Speeding up might provoke him further, and calling for help felt pointless when I didn't even know where I was. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. Just get to the next town, I thought. Find a gas station or somewhere with people. Don't stop until you're safe. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, dark and empty. The truck's headlights burning into my rearview mirror like a predator stalking its prey. Every nerve in my body was on edge as I tried to come up with a plan, but deep down, I knew this night was far from over. The first sign of trouble came about 20 minutes after I'd first noticed the truck. I hadn't paid much attention at first. Trucks like that weren't exactly uncommon on Texas highways, especially at night. It was one of those older models, probably from the 1980s or early 90s, its paint faded and headlights slightly uneven. It kept its distance at first, just far enough back that I couldn't make out any details about the driver. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. The truck could just be heading the same way. There was no reason to assume anything unusual. But after a while, I noticed that it matched my pace almost perfectly. Whenever I sped up or slowed down, the truck did the same, never drifting too close or too far behind. I tried to shake the feeling of unease, focusing instead on the empty stretch of road ahead. The highway seemed endless, flanked by flat fields and the occasional cluster of trees. The darkness outside was absolute, broken only by the glow of my headlights and the faint shimmer of stars overhead. It was the kind of isolation that could either feel peaceful or unnerving, and tonight, it was definitely the latter. To test my theory, I signaled and changed lanes. The truck mirrored the move within seconds. My pulse quickened. I slowed down, almost to a crawl, watching in my rearview mirror as the truck did the same. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a coincidence. My first instinct was to pull over, but something about the situation made me hesitate. What if the driver had bad intentions? There was no one else on the road, no nearby gas stations or open businesses where I could seek help. Stopping in the middle of nowhere didn't seem like a smart move. Instead, I decided to take the next exit, a small off-ramp that led to a rural road. It wasn't part of my planned route, but I figured it was worth a shot. If the truck followed, I'd know for sure that it wasn't just heading in the same direction by chance. I turned on my blinker and eased onto the ramp, my heart pounding as I checked the mirror. Sure enough, the truck followed, its headlights unwavering. The narrow country road was even darker than the highway, bordered by tall grass and shadowy silhouettes of trees. The truck's high beams cut through the darkness, casting an eerie glow over everything. I tried to stay calm, keeping my speed steady as I navigated the winding road. Maybe they'd lose interest if I didn't react. Maybe they were just trying to scare me for fun. But deep down, I knew this was more than a prank. Then the headlights flashed. Once, twice. A long honk followed, echoing through the quiet night. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as panic began to take hold. What did they want? Why were they doing this? My mind raced with questions, but no answers came. Desperate to lose them, I made another turn, taking a random road that looked like it might loop back toward the highway. The truck followed, its headlights staying uncomfortably close now. The honking started again, louder and more aggressive this time, as if the driver was trying to force me to stop. I pressed the gas pedal harder, my car lurching forward as I sped down the unfamiliar road. The truck kept pace, its engine roaring like a predator closing in on its prey. The winding turns and narrow lanes made it impossible to build much distance between us. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat louder than the last. Finally, I spotted a small rest area up ahead, its dim lights barely visible through the trees. Relief surged through me. Even if it wasn't occupied, at least it was a place to stop and reassess. I pulled into the lot, parking under one of the flickering streetlights. The truck slowed as it approached, lingering at the entrance for a moment before pulling into the lot as well. I stayed in my car, locking the doors and trying to steady my breathing. The truck parked a few spaces away, its engine idling as if waiting for me to make the next move. Through the glare of its headlights, I could just barely make out the silhouette of the driver, a figure sitting motionless behind the wheel. My phone sat on the passenger seat, but the thought of calling for help felt futile. By the time anyone got here, who knew what could happen? For now, I had to think to stay calm and figure out a way out of this. The truck's engine revved once, twice. Then the headlights flashed again, and I knew this was far from over. I didn't dare move at first. The truck idled, its engine rumbling low and steady, while its headlights lit up the surrounding lot in harsh white beams. The faint flicker of the rest area's streetlight cast long shadows over everything, stretching across the cracked pavement. It felt like I was trapped in a spotlight, with no idea of what to do next. The figure in the truck didn't step out, didn't signal or call out, nothing. They just sat there, a silhouette against the glow of their headlights. It felt like a standoff, but I wasn't armed for it. My mind raced through possible plans, but none of them felt safe. I had no idea what this person wanted or what they were capable of. All I knew was that they had followed me out here for a reason, and it wasn't good. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring straight ahead as if ignoring them would make them go away. But the truck didn't leave. Its headlights were glaring, bright enough to make my eyes sting, and the longer it sat there, the heavier the air inside my car felt. I could feel panic creeping up on me, tightening my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then the honking started again, a long, loud blare that made me flinch, followed by two shorter bursts. My heart raced as I looked over at the truck, trying to make sense of what was happening. The figure still hadn't moved. I couldn't see their face, just the vague outline of a person sitting behind the wheel. But their presence was oppressive, almost suffocating. I knew I had to do something. Sitting here, waiting for them to make the first move, wasn't going to help. But what could I do? My phone was on the passenger seat, and the thought of calling for help crossed my mind again. But how could I explain this? Hi. Someone's following me in a truck and honking a lot. Didn't exactly sound urgent enough to send a patrol car racing my way. Besides, out here, who knew how long it would take for help to arrive? If this person decided to act, I'd be on my own. I thought about pulling back onto the highway, trying to lose them again, but something about the way they were acting made me hesitate. It felt like a game to them, a game where they were in control. I didn't want to play along, but I also didn't see another option. My car was running, my tank was full. If it came down to it, I could just drive. But where would I go? I scanned the parking lot, looking for anything or anyone that could help. There was nothing. No other cars, no vending machines, not even a restroom building. Just cracked asphalt, weeds poking through the edges, and the faint hum of the streetlight above. It looked like the kind of place that had been forgotten years ago, left to decay in the middle of nowhere. The truck's engine revved suddenly, loud and aggressive, snapping me out of my thoughts. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I watched the vehicle lurch forward slightly, its tires crunching against the pavement. The headlights flickered off for a moment, plunging the lot into near darkness, before flashing back on, brighter than ever. It was like they were trying to send a message, a warning. My breathing quickened as I realized I couldn't just sit here any longer. The longer I waited, the more dangerous this felt. I shifted into gear and pulled out of the parking space, my headlights slicing through the darkness as I headed for the exit. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror, watching as the truck's headlights swung around to follow. I pressed the gas pedal harder, speeding up as I turned back onto the road. The truck was right behind me, its high beams blinding in my mirrors. I tried to focus on the road ahead, on the curves and turns that might give me a chance to lose them. But no matter how fast I went, they kept pace, their engine roaring like some wild animal chasing me down. The honking started again, relentless and deafening. I clenched my teeth, my knuckles white as I gripped the wheel. What did they want? Why wouldn't they leave me alone? My mind raced with questions, none of which I had answers for. All I knew was that I couldn't let them catch up. I spotted a side road up ahead, barely visible in the darkness, and made a sharp turn without signaling. My tires skidded on the loose gravel, and I felt the car fishtail slightly before I regained control. The truck followed, its headlights bouncing as it tore down the uneven road behind me. The narrow lane was lined with tall trees, their branches forming an almost tunnel-like canopy overhead. The shadows felt alive, shifting and flickering as my headlights passed. I thought I'd made a smart move, but the truck stayed on my tail, its lights growing brighter as it closed the distance. The road was too narrow to speed up much more without risking a crash, and every bump and pothole sent a jolt through my car. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I realized I couldn't outrun them here. I needed a new plan. Up ahead, I saw a break in the trees where the road seemed to open up into a clearing. I didn't know what was out there. Maybe another lot, maybe just an open field. But it felt like my only chance. I sped toward it, my breath shallow and quick, hoping I could find a way to turn the tables. As I entered the clearing, I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop in the middle of the open space. Dust and gravel kicked up around me, and I felt the car shudder as it came to a halt. I watched in the mirror as the truck slowed, stopping just a few yards behind me. Its headlights were blinding, making it impossible to see who was inside. But I could feel their eyes on me, feel the tension radiating from the vehicle. I was done running. My hands trembled as I reached for the door handle, ready to confront whoever was behind this. But as I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air, I realized I had no idea what I was walking into. I stood there, one foot on the cracked pavement, staring into the truck's blinding headlights. The cool night air rushed over me, but it did little to calm my racing heart. My legs felt unsteady, as if they might give out at any moment. I had no weapon, no plan, just raw adrenaline keeping me upright. The truck's engine rumbled low and steady, the sound vibrating in my chest. The driver didn't move. They just sat there, a shadowy figure behind the glare of the lights. It was maddening, this waiting game, and I couldn't take it anymore. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking slightly. "What do you want?" The words echoed in the stillness, swallowed up by the empty clearing. No response came from the truck. No window rolled down, no door opened. Just the unrelenting glare of the headlights and the steady growl of the engine. My pulse quickened as I scanned the area, hoping for some kind of backup plan. The clearing was surrounded by tall grass and scrubby trees, their branches swaying slightly in the faint breeze. In the distance, I could make out the dark outline of a barn or storage shed, but it was too far to run to without risking exposure. I took a shaky step forward, squinting against the bright lights. "If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny," I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Just leave me alone." Still, no response. The figure remained motionless behind the wheel, their silhouette barely visible through the windshield. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. If they wanted to hurt me, wouldn't they have acted by now? Or were they waiting for me to make the first move? The silence was suffocating. I could feel my panic building, threatening to take over. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, and I forced myself to take a deep breath. I wasn't going to let fear win. Not yet. Then, without warning, the truck's engine roared louder. The vehicle lurched forward a few feet, its tires crunching against the gravel. I stumbled back instinctively, my heart hammering in my chest. The headlights seemed to grow even brighter, their intensity almost blinding. "Stop!" I yelled, my voice high and strained. "I'm calling the police!" I grabbed my phone from my pocket, fumbling to unlock it. My fingers felt clumsy, uncooperative, as I tried to dial 911. The truck didn't move again, but the engine continued to rumble, a low, menacing sound that made my stomach churn. Before I could press call, the truck's horn blared, a deafening, relentless noise that echoed across the clearing. I dropped my phone in surprise, the screen landing face up on the ground. The horn stopped abruptly, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt even more oppressive than the noise. I bent down to grab the phone, my hands trembling. As I straightened up, I realized the truck had shifted again, rolling forward just a little closer. My breath caught in my throat. They were playing with me, testing me, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go. My eyes darted back to the shed in the distance. It wasn't much, but it might be my only shot at getting out of this alive. If I could make it there and hide, maybe I could figure out my next move. Maybe I could buy myself some time. Clutching my phone tightly, I took one last look at the truck. The driver still hadn't stepped out, hadn't said a word. They were waiting, watching, daring me to make a decision. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I turned and sprinted toward the shed, my feet pounding against the gravel. The cool night air stung my lungs as I pushed myself to run faster than I thought possible. Behind me, the truck's engine roared again, and I heard the sound of tires skidding as it started to move. I didn't look back. I couldn't. All I could do was focus on the shed ahead, its dark shape growing larger with each step. The adrenaline coursing through my veins drowned out everything else, the sound of my own breath, the pounding of my heart, even the noise of the truck closing in behind me. Reaching the shed, I grabbed the rusted handle of the door and yanked it open. The hinges creaked loudly, protesting against the force, but I didn't stop. I slipped inside, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it with the flimsy latch. It wouldn't hold long, but it was better than nothing. Inside, the air was damp and musty, the scent of decaying wood filling my nose. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the walls, casting faint beams across the cluttered interior. Old tools, scraps of metal, and wooden crates were scattered haphazardly, creating a maze of potential hiding spots. I crouched behind a stack of crates, clutching my phone to my chest as I tried to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped it again. The screen was still lit, showing the half-dialed 911 call. I pressed call and held the phone to my ear, praying for someone to pick up. The operator's voice crackled through the line, calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say anything, the shed was flooded with light. My blood turned to ice as I realized the truck had pulled up outside, its headlights shining through the gaps in the wooden walls. The operator's voice repeated, more insistent this time. Hello? Are you there? I whispered into the phone, my voice barely audible. Someone's following me. They're outside. Please, send help. I clutched the phone tighter, my heart pounding as the operator assured me help was on the way. But deep down, I knew I was on my own for now, and whoever was outside wasn't going to wait for backup to arrive. The footsteps outside grew louder, deliberate and slow, as if the person wanted me to hear every step. My whole body tensed, and I pressed myself further into the shadows behind the crates. The wooden planks of the shed's walls were old and warped, and I could see faint slivers of movement as the figures circled the building. I held the phone to my ear, the operator's calm voice grounding me as she reassured me that help was on the way. Stay on the line, she said. Officers are en route. Can you see the person? No, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. They're outside. I don't think they know where I am yet. The sound of footsteps stopped. My stomach sank as the silence stretched out, broken only by the faint hum of the truck's engine cooling in the night air. I strained to hear anything, movement, breathing, anything that would tell me where they were. But the stillness was suffocating. Then the shed door rattled. The sound was sharp and jarring, and I had to bite back a gasp. The flimsy latch held for now, but I knew it wouldn't withstand much force. My mind raced as I tried to think of a plan. There was no other exit, no way to escape without coming face to face with whoever was out there. The door rattled again, harder this time. The wood creaked under the pressure, and I could see the faint outline of a hand gripping the edge through a gap in the planks. My pulse was a thunderous roar in my ears as I realized the latch wouldn't hold much longer. "Stay hidden," the operator's voice urged. "Officers are only a few minutes away. Don't engage." A few minutes. It felt like an eternity. The door gave way with a loud crack, swinging open to reveal the silhouette of a man standing in the doorway. He didn't step inside right away. Instead, he stood there, scanning the dark interior as if savoring the moment. "Hey," he called out, his voice low and gravelly. "I know you're in here. Just want to talk." I didn't move, didn't breathe. My grip on the phone tightened as I tried to make myself as small as possible behind the crates. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The man took a step inside, the floorboards groaning under his weight. In the dim moonlight filtering through the cracks, I could make out his face, weathered, with a scruffy beard and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He was holding something in his hand, though I couldn't tell what it was. "Come on," he said, his tone almost mocking. "No need to be scared. Just want to have a little chat." Another step, then another. He was moving closer, his eyes scanning the room with a predator's patience. I ducked lower, pressing myself against the crates, my free hand fumbling for anything I could use as a weapon. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, a rusted wrench, heavy and solid. I wrapped my hand around it, my heart hammering in my chest. The man stopped a few feet from my hiding spot. His head tilted slightly, and I realized he'd spotted the edge of my shoe peeking out from behind the crates. "There you are," he said, a grin spreading across his face. He lunged forward, but I didn't think. I swung the wrench as hard as I could, the metal connecting with a sickening thud against his forearm. He let out a pained yell, stumbling back and dropping whatever he'd been holding. It clattered to the floor, a crowbar. Adrenaline surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, clutching the wrench like a lifeline. The man recovered quickly, his expression darkening as he stepped toward me again. "You're gonna regret that," he growled. Before he could reach me, the distant sound of sirens cut through the tension. The man froze, his head snapping toward the sound. For a moment, we both stood there, the reality of the approaching police sinking in. Then, without a word, he turned and bolted out of the shed. I heard his footsteps pounding against the gravel, followed by the roar of the truck's engine as he started it up. By the time I reached the doorway, he was gone, the tail lights of his truck disappearing into the darkness. Relief flooded over me as the flashing lights of police cruisers came into view, their beams cutting through the night. I staggered out of the shed, the wrench still clutched in my hand, and waved them down. 2 officers stepped out, their expressions a mix of concern and urgency. "Are you okay?" one of them asked, his flashlight sweeping over me. "I think so," I managed to say, my voice shaking. "He just left. He was in a truck, an old one." They nodded, immediately radioing the description to nearby units. Another officer stayed with me, asking questions and jotting down notes as I tried to piece together everything that had happened. As the adrenaline began to fade, the reality of the night hit me like a tidal wave. My hands were still trembling, and my thoughts were a jumbled mess. The officers' reassurances were kind, but they felt distant, almost unreal. All I could think about was the man's face, the way he had stared at me like I was some kind of prey. Hours later, after filing a report and answering countless questions, I finally made it home. The silence of my apartment felt both comforting and oppressive. I double-checked every lock, pulled the curtains tight, and sat on the couch, replaying the night's events in my mind. The police never caught him. They found the truck abandoned a few miles down the road, wiped clean of any fingerprints. Whoever he was, he had vanished without a trace. I haven't driven that stretch of highway since. I avoid back roads, stay away from deserted rest areas, and keep my doors locked at all times. The fear hasn't left me, not entirely. It lingers in the shadows, in the quiet moments, in the headlights of every unfamiliar vehicle. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear the low rumble of a truck's engine in the distance, chasing me through the dark. If you like this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell to listen to new stories from Mr. Fear every day. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching this video. Thank you for watching.